28 employees gone. In a single sweep, Alaska's NOAA Fisheries Regional Office lost a quarter of its workforce. John Kurland, the agency's Alaska director, confirms the cuts reduced capacity in dramatic fashion, gutting core fishery management functions. This is happening right now in a state where 60% of America's commercial seafood comes from. Alaska accounts for about 60% of the volume of the nation's commercial seafood catch. The Trump administration just proposed slashing NOAA's budget by $1.7 billion, a 27% cut. What does this mean for the fishermen who depend on these waters? How will Alaska manage the nation's most valuable fisheries without the science to back it up? And why is this happening while the administration demands the industry catch more fish? The Trump administration has proposed a $1.7 billion, or about 27%, cut to NOAA's 2026 budget. We're talking about reducing NOAA's funding from $6.1 billion to $4.5 billion. But Alaska is getting hit harder than anywhere else. Since January, the Alaska Regional Office of NOAA Fisheries has lost 28 employees, about a quarter of its workforce. The Alaska Fisheries Science Center, which conducts the research that sets harvest limits for pollock, salmon, crab, and halibut, lost 51 people. 51 trained scientists and researchers, gone. Robert Foy, director of the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, told the North Pacific Fishery Management Council that job and budget cuts would delay modernization work. A 5-year project to redesign fisheries surveys is now projected to take 6 or 7 years. Survey teams had staff sitting in airports on Saturdays, not knowing if contracts were finalized to start surveys on Monday. This isn't just bureaucratic inconvenience. These surveys determine how many fish can be safely caught without collapsing stocks. The Alaska Fisheries Science Center's ability to analyze ages of fish is down 40%. That demographic information is critical for managers to set harvest levels that are sustainable into the future. The information technology system that tracks catches during harvest seasons is compromised. Kurland stated the office has less than a skeleton crew in its IT shop, creating severe constraints. When you can't track catches in real time, you can't manage quotas. When you can't manage quotas, fisheries close. Alaska's seafood industry isn't some niche market. In 2021 and 2022, it contributed $6 billion annually to the state's economy. The industry harvested 5.8 billion pounds of seafood in 2022, worth $2 billion at the dock. Processors turned this harvest into 2.3 billion pounds of product worth $5.2 billion, adding $3.2 billion in value. Seafood processing is the largest manufacturing sector in Alaska, accounting for 66% of the state's manufacturing employment. The industry directly employed 48,000 workers in Alaska in 2021 and 2022, including 17,000 Alaskans from more than 142 communities. Total Alaska labor income was $2.3 billion, including multiplier effects. Nationally, Alaska Seafood contributes $15.8 billion to the U.S. economy and creates 81,100 full-time equivalent jobs. Alaska produces more seafood by volume than all other states combined. 9 of the top 20 U.S. fishing ports by value are in Alaska. 8 of the top 20 U.S. ports by volume are in Alaska. Then came 2023. The Alaska seafood industry suffered a $1.8 billion loss between 2022 and 2023. The fishing industry saw a 50% decline in profitability from 2021 to 2023. Vessel revenues declined 32%, totaling $617 million in losses. First wholesale values dropped $1.2 billion, or 26%. This total direct loss equaled $1.8 billion. For sockeye salmon, prices paid to fishers averaged 65 cents per pound in 2023, less than half what they received in 2022. It was the lowest nominal price since 2004 and among the lowest prices on record when adjusted for inflation. Here's where it gets absurd. While gutting the scientific infrastructure that manages fisheries, the Trump administration is demanding that the industry harvest more fish, in line with an administrative order issued by the president on April 17. Read that again. Cut the scientists who count the fish but catch more fish. It's like firing air traffic controllers and then scheduling more flights. David Witherell, executive director of the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, warned that cuts of this magnitude will have significant impacts on fisheries in the North Pacific. The council depends on NOAA data to fulfill its mission under the Magnuson-Stevens Act, the bedrock of federal fisheries policy. Federal employees with NOAA's Fisheries Division are responsible for opening and closing fisheries in season, issuing permits, providing technical analysis, and conducting monitoring programs. Without adequate staffing, none of this works. Frank Kelty, a fisheries consultant for Dutch Harbor, the largest commercial fishing port in the nation, posed a simple question about the proposed cuts and reorganization. He asked how authorities would even open a fishery if they don't have any information on what it's going to do. Reduced scientific surveys make stock assessments less precise. Inadequate surveys result in unnecessary reductions in sustainable yields. Reduced surveys mean reduced confidence, which leads to lower catch limits. The cuts aren't random. They follow a specific ideological playbook. The Heritage Institute's Project 2025 blueprint for the second Trump administration described NOAA's National Weather Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, and other agencies as a colossal operation that has become one of the main drivers of the climate change alarm industry. The document explicitly labels these agencies as harmful to future U.S. prosperity. This explains why NOAA became a target of the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk. The DOGE program summarily fired thousands of employees across various government agencies, with NOAA receiving particular attention. The proposal would devastate NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, cutting its budget by $485 million to about $171 million. At that funding level, the office would essentially cease to exist as a functioning division. NOAA has lost nearly 1,900 employees since Trump took office, with 3,000 vacancies due to firings of probationary employees and buyouts, according to Senator Maria Cantwell. These aren't political appointees. They're career scientists, data analysts, and field technicians who spent their lives studying marine ecosystems. Morgan Saladino, who managed the Observer program that puts scientists onto fishing boats to monitor their catch, got her firing email in the middle of debriefing an Observer. She told the scientist to go sit in another room while she processed the news. 2 of the 3 employees in her Anchorage office were terminated. The proposed 2026 budget eliminates entire programs. NOAA Fisheries faces a $422.5 million cut, representing a 33% decrease from fiscal year 2024 funding. The National Marine Fisheries Service could face a nearly 30% cut, or a drop of $324 million in funding. Funding for species recovery grants would end. Habitat conservation and restoration programs would disappear. The 2026 budget would eliminate NOAA Fisheries' responsibility for ensuring fisheries compliance with the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act, consolidating those efforts under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Ecological Services Program, which itself faces a $37 million budget cut. The Marine Mammal Commission would be terminated entirely. If responsibilities are transferred to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as outlined in budget documents, it may create bureaucratic delays and inefficiencies in policy implementation. These delays or information loss could affect decisions on fishing quotas, habitat protection, and bycatch regulations. A lot of the Alaska Fisheries Science Center's salmon research is now on hold. Work at the Little Port Walter Research Station, the oldest year-round research station in Alaska, is now canceled. Ann Vanderhoeven, a North Pacific Fishery Management Council member, expressed her growing alarm in December. She stated she's getting concerned and almost freaked out about how much data is potentially being lost. This data isn't optional. It's the difference between sustainable fishing and ecological collapse. Congress has pushed back. The Senate's version of the bill allocates approximately $6.14 billion to NOAA for fiscal year 2026, just below the $6.18 billion approved for 2025. The House proposed $5.8 billion, a 6% decrease rather than the administration's requested 27% cut. But the fight isn't over, and Alaska fishermen are caught in the middle. There are fewer people harvesting seafood commercially in Alaska than at any time on record. The industry already faces competition in glutted markets, rising costs, declining fish stocks in some species, and labor shortages. Now add the loss of the federal infrastructure that makes commercial fishing possible. How do you set catch limits without stock assessments? How do you manage quotas without permit processors? How do you protect endangered species without monitoring? The total number of active commercial fishing vessels declined by 29% in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands from 2003 to 2023. The number of active seafood processors declined by 32%. In the Gulf of Alaska, these numbers declined by 20% and 7% respectively. The Gulf of Alaska has experienced a decade of ecological and economic challenges that have led to declining participation and undermined the economic status and social well-being of fishing communities. According to Steve Kaspersky, lead author of NOAA's Economic Snapshot and an economist with the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, commercial fisheries have flourished in Alaska for generations, shaping social structures, cultural identity, and robust local economies. Beyond the economic impacts, the decline of fisheries in the region threatens a way of life, sense of place, community, and identity. The 2023 downturn led to 38,000 job losses nationwide and a $4.3 billion loss in total U.S. output. The most affected states, including Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and California, saw a combined loss of $191 million in state and local tax revenues. Seafood is the top private sector employer in Alaska. For many Alaska coastal communities, fisheries are the primary contributor to their local economy, helping shape their social structures and cultural identities. The cuts come at the worst possible time. Alaska's marine environment faces unprecedented changes. In areas of thawing permafrost in northwestern Alaska, a phenomenon called rusting rivers has released high levels of metals that are toxic for fish. The thaw creates acid rock drainage, turning clear waters orange or red. The problem merited a chapter in this year's Arctic Report Card, issued on December 16 by NOAA. Invasive species threaten native fish populations. European green crabs, first discovered in Alaska in 2022, are spreading rapidly. The Metlakatla Indian community trapped more than 40,000 of the crabs this year in their effort to combat the invasion. Northern pike, which devour salmon fry, have established populations in south-central Alaska and can now swim across Cook Inlet to colonize new areas. Changing ocean temperatures affect fish stocks. Species like salmon and pollock rely on specific temperature ranges for survival, and shifts in ocean conditions affect their migration routes and population stability. Between 2018 and 2021, more than 10 billion snow crab disappeared from the eastern Bering Sea. Scientists determined the cause was a marine heatwave between 2018 and 2019. Understanding and responding to these threats requires robust scientific capacity, the very capacity being eliminated. Rick Spinrad, former NOAA administrator who worked through 9 administrations starting with Reagan, calls the budget proposal strategically misguided. He emphasized that cutting research removes the seed corn for any further progress in the agency's mission. Beyond fisheries management, NOAA's budget cuts have significant implications for weather forecasting and ocean monitoring, both vital to the safety and success of Alaska's fishing industry. NOAA's forecasting services provide essential information on wind speeds, wave heights, and potential storm systems, helping fishermen make informed decisions at sea. Without reliable forecasts, fishermen risk their lives in dangerous conditions. Vice Chair Bill Twait of the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, speaking in a personal capacity, identified the basic cause for concern as twofold. One is just loss of the science, the other is the staff resources. Twait and Witherell both noted that diluting NOAA's mission would make it harder to attract and retain top-tier scientists, many of whom dedicated their careers to marine research. Once that expertise is lost, it could take decades to rebuild. Alaska's fishing industry relies on a delicate balance, ensuring sustainable harvest while protecting marine ecosystems. Fisheries management strategies guided by environmental data, monitoring programs, and ongoing research collaborations uphold this equilibrium. With NOAA's climate research experiencing significant cuts, the industry risks losing access to these essential tools. 28 employees in Alaska's regional office, 51 at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, nearly 1,900 across NOAA nationally, a $1.7 billion budget cut, a 27% reduction in funding for the agency that manages 60% of America's commercial seafood catch, a $6 billion annual industry reduced to skeleton operations, and $1.8 billion loss compounded by federal abandonment. The administration wants more fish caught with less science backing the decisions. It wants sustainable management without the managers. Alaska's fishing communities, already struggling with a 50% decline in profitability and the lowest sockeye salmon prices in 2 decades, now face an uncertain future. The data that protects both fish stocks and fishing jobs is disappearing. The weather forecasts that keep fishermen safe are at risk. The age analysis that ensures sustainable harvests is down 40%. Congress is fighting back with bipartisan opposition, but the damage is already done. Scientists have left. Contracts are frozen, surveys are delayed, research stations are closed. And Alaska, the nation's seafood powerhouse contributing $15.8 billion to the national economy, is being asked to navigate these waters blind. The question isn't whether Alaska's fishing industry can survive these cuts. The question is whether anyone in Washington is listening to the people whose livelihoods depend on the answer.